So as we get ready to work on this PL-259, we've got a little piece of instructions that Bill found on the net, or he's had hidden down here in his lab all these years. I don't know for sure, but it's a very handy little piece of paper that gives you all the measurements that you need when you're trimming your cable down to get ready to put this connector on. So we're going to be referencing that.
Actually,
as
Kevin,
we go through.
that came out of the ARRL handbook.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yes.
So if you want your own copy of this, guys, just buy the handbook for $100 and you're all set. But clearly there's more in the handbook than just this. So anyway, I have 2 copies of the handbook. Bill has 20
or
more. And I've also got 1 or 2 copies of the antenna book. The 2 required publications for hams. So anyway, so we'll be using this as our reference because it comes right out and tells you what you need to do step by step for these solder PL-259 connectors. So we'll be right back. All right. So the first thing we got to do is we've got to get this cable prepped, and according to our instruction sheet here, we need to trim about 3/4 of an inch of the outer jacket off of this coax. Let me get this in frame here. There we go. Now we can either do this with a ruler, or we can use our adapter itself to inform us how much we have to trim off. And we only need to trim off from the tip to this point right here, the bottom of these ridged rings here that you eventually use to hold one end of the connector while you're doing things. So I'm gonna put my strippers on here. I'm gonna cut right here, hopefully, and get this trimmed off. So let's try that real quick. Use the right size. All right, so that's done. Let's see how we did. Okay, that is dead on, boys and girls. Okay, practice makes perfect. Did I just say that? So full disclosure, we've already attempted to make one of these connectors and I screwed it up pretty bad. So that may make it into the blooper reel later. All right, so that's why I said practice makes perfect, because I've already been through most of this, and this one should be a lot tighter than the last one. All right, next thing we need to do is we need to peel this braid back. I've seen this done a couple different ways on videos. But this way seems to work pretty good.
Sometimes you can use the dental tool to.
Look how fast that was compared to last time, Bill.
Very good. You're getting.
It's just done.
Good.
Okay, so I've already made 2 mistakes. All right, I didn't put any of these components on my cable before I peeled this braid back. So this one will go on because it's pretty big. This one will not. So what I'm going to do,
because you only have a short piece of cable, you're going to.
A, I only have a short piece of cable, and B, we don't have a connector on the other end yet. So I can go ahead and put this on in this direction, slide it up, try not to make a mess of things, and we'll be fine. All right, so that's on. Now I've got a binder clip here that Bill loaned me to keep all these things from sliding off the end of the cable while we work with it. All right, so this is on. So our next step is to expose the center conductor down here, and we just want to leave about, a little bit, what did you say last time, Bill?
A 1/16 of an inch. You just want to make sure that the braid, if it bubbled up or bunched up underneath there, that it wouldn't contact the center conductor.
Okay. Now, important safety tip when using strippers like this: don't apply too much pressure, because your strippers may be smaller than you think, and you'll end up going right through everything. I did that during a demonstration at a club meeting one night. That was not embarrassing. So just clip that all the way off. And we don't want to nick that center conductor. If you pull wires off as you're going through this, you went too far. All right. And fortunately, I did not pull any wires off. Okay, so this looks pretty good. This looks better than the first time. And I don't really have any trimming to do down here at this point. I probably will once I'm done with the next step. So
If you just have a little bit, you can just turn them clockwise, because that's the way it's going to screw on.
Right.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So right now what I need to do is I need to tin this tip. All right. Before I do that, I know a guy. I'm a telecom guy by trade, and when I was first learning the ham radio business, he gave me a big lecture on how he does his soldering. And the first thing he does is he gives everything an alcohol bath just to make sure it's all clean. I'm not doing that. So I just wanted to make that point in case you were interested. I don't need that reducer on there. So it's time now for my speech about Panavice products. I'm not a sponsored YouTuber, so everything I say from the heart and not from my wallet, because I don't make any money on YouTube. Panavice is almost mandatory equipment on your workbench, guys. It's flexible, it's adaptable, and it doesn't cost nearly as much money as you might think. If you lifted this up and could feel the weight of this thing, if you don't happen to already have one, you wouldn't think this is a $200 piece of gear. It is not. And Bill's
And you're gonna see one on steroids.
Yeah, so this is Bill's with every personally engineered option imaginable on it, including multiple solder feeders made out of Bic pens. And he's taken some helping hands that we've all bought on Amazon before, and he's tie wrapped it to this, so he's got an extra way to hold something. No respectable ham or electrical engineer has a Panavice whose little pockets are not filled with stuff. So you can tell I'm not respectable because mine are spotless. You could eat off of mine. Bill's, you don't want to try that. All right, so that's the Panavice. Look them up on Amazon. They have an Amazon store, and they're just really pretty cool. So enough said on that. So like I said, I'm not getting paid. All right, I'm going to tin this center conductor here. Just get a little bit of heat on it, and not get too crazy. We're just tinning. We're not trying to. Make. Now that solder got a little close down to my dielectric there, closer than I wanted it to, but I don't see any damage. I don't think anything melted, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. All right, so let me pause here, and we'll be right back. Okay, next thing I want to do with this is I'm going to scrape these holes out on this adapter to get rid of some of the plating. That'll make it easier for the solder to adhere to the adapter, and it'll hopefully reduce the amount of heat we have to apply to this too. So we want to be in and out on this, as we discussed earlier. So we want to do everything we can to expedite the soldering job on this. On the first one that we did earlier that I kind of jacked up, because it was my first one, we really put a lot of heat on that connector because it took me a while to get everything in. These are probably good. Yeah, I can see some of the shavings showing up on my hand here, so that's fine. All right, so that's good. So now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and assemble the connector a little bit. I'm going to do one more check here. Yeah, I'm going to have to do a little trimming here. Get rid of some of this braid, because we don't want our braid getting in the threads of the adapter. And we also want to do one more visual check to make sure it's not going to be making contact with the center conductor when we fully assemble it. Because otherwise we've created a short and we've just made a completely useless cable. So, and we'll show you how to check for shorts too when we're done. I call checking for shorts the dipstick of ham radio. When you got your first car and your dad was teaching you how to take care of your car, the first thing he taught you was what, Bill? How to check the oil, right?
Check the oil.
All right. So in ham radio, the first thing we want to learn is how to check for shorts. So we do that, and we do that with a multimeter, but we'll go through that in just a minute. So we're going to get this on here good and tight. I have pretty strong hands, so I'm going to call that good. All right, so this baby's assembled. Now the next step is to get some solder in these holes that expose our braid here, and get that nice and clean. And hopefully I do a better job this time than I did last time. So we'll set up for that and be right back. All right, so I'm ready to put some solder in these holes on the adapter. I'm going to go ahead and just squirt a little bit of flux in it before I do it. And again, we want to be fast, but we also want to be right. So it's okay to take a couple extra seconds if you think you have to, but don't dawdle. All right, we're going to be putting a lot of heat in here, and we don't want to be hanging around too long. So I'm going to go ahead and retin my tip here a little bit. Kind of clean it up. Now this is kind of tricky. There's a couple things to consider here. One is, and probably most importantly, keeping solder out of these threads. That's where I screwed up the last one that you are not going to see except on a blooper reel. Because if solder gets in these threads, you're not going to get it out without destroying the connector. So we want to keep the solder out of the threads, and the best way to do that, as I've been told, is to come at this from above the threads, start applying your heat, and then just watch where your solder is going as you apply it. Okay, so burn some flux off and withdraw. Let Bill come over and tell me how awesome I am at this.
You're going to make all my connectors now.
There we go. That's what I wanted to hear. All right. So now I've got a little bit up here, but that'll chip off. In fact, it just did. So that's okay. So now we'll turn it, and we'll do the next one, see if we can be as clean on the next one as we were on that one. So that was my fifth joint on one of these connectors. So it just goes to show you how quickly you can learn to do this. It's not rocket science. It just takes practice. So, and I got a lot of practice soldering, putting that QRP rig together earlier this year. So I kind of understand the basics. All right.
And you notice how much faster it's going now, too.
Right. Now I'm not using the best width solder here. This is pretty thin, but it's doing the job. I didn't really want to buy the super heavy solder. I don't know how much of that I would have used in my lifetime. So you also kind of want to keep an eye on how much solder is on your tip, because that will come off at some point. It's got to have some place to go. So, and I'm trying to remember how much in inches, how much solder I'm using for each of these, so that I get a consistent amount each time. All right, so that's 3, right? Coming up on 4. Bill and I are very active members of the Johnson County Amateur Radio Club in Johnson County, Kansas. We meet on the 2nd and 4th Fridays of each month at a church here in Overland Park, Kansas. And this year we've made a concerted effort to be more hands-on during our presentations. That's actually the worst of all 4 of them, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you need to heat just a little more. Stick it back in the hole and just heat it. Just let
Yeah.
it. Now your iron's coming up to temperature. There you go. 1, 2, 3, pull. Yeah, move it away before you untrigger it.
All right, this one's a little bit messy. I think you should get your desoldering gun out, Bill. Let's suck some of that out of there.
Let's see what you got there. Yeah, I think so.
Bill has a very old school desoldering gun. It's not really a gun, it's an iron that just kind of works in reverse, and he's going to let that heat up, and we'll get that cleaned up. We'll be right back. All right, what's your critique, Bill?
Well, as you can see, mine is a little less solder, and it doesn't bubble up. You probably could have heated it just a little bit more, and that solder would have flowed then a little bit smoother into it. It is a good joint. It just a little much solder.
Okay. All right, so hotter and less solder. So when I built my first QCX, my first attempt at building the QCX Plus, man, I had so much solder on the back of that board. When it didn't work, we couldn't figure out where the problem was. It took us quite a while to figure out where the problem was, and unfortunately, it wasn't. We couldn't make the radio work, so I ordered another kit, and that one came out a lot better, as you've seen in one of the other videos. All right, so now we want to go ahead and solder this inner conductor in place, and so we'll go ahead and do that real quick here. And I'm going to borrow some thick solder from Bill for that. So we spend a little less time on this, because my solder is kind of thin. Guess I probably am going to have to order some 0.05 to be able to keep up with this. So, alright, so what we want to do is we want to get the element inside the sleeve. We don't want to heat it from the outside, because that'll cause more problems than we fix. So we want to get the element inside the sleeve to the extent that we can, and give it a few seconds of heat, and then start applying solder. So let's go ahead and give it a shot here.
Enough.
That looks pretty good.
Yeah, I would call it good.
Yeah. Oops. Sorry, guys. Okay. Now, let's get this thing assembled and see how we did. This thing's probably a little warm. Not as warm as it was last time.
Yeah, it was very hot last time.
Yeah,
but that comes with experience as how quickly you move from one to the next one. You learn how to hold it just right, and sometimes I find, and you noticed when I was doing with this, I do a rocking motion, a little bit, not a lot, but that sometimes helps center where you want to be at what you're doing. Perfect.
All right, so we got it on. All right, now at this point, I could throw some heat shrink on here, and I'm probably not going to finish this cable here today at Bill's house, because I think I do want to put some heat shrink on. So I'll leave the other end of the cable bare, and then when I get home, I'll throw some heat shrink on this end, and then put the connector on the other end.
Do you want to test your continuity on it?
Hey, let's test our continuity. So
Well, you can show them my super duper continuity tester.
yes, so Bill has a crazy continuity tester here, which he has modified to actually shut off by itself when not in use, and also make a really loud noise for the hard of hearing. All right, so I'm going to hold this up. I'm going to let Bill do our check here.
Looks good.
All right,
Looks good.
so there's no short. There's no short on this connector between the center conductor and the braid, which is good. Now, if there was another connector on this, Bill, you got a jumper that's got connectors on both ends?
Mm.
All right, so we're going to take a cable that Bill keeps on his bench, and we're going to do an end-to-end continuity check on it. Let's just put both ends in here.
Yeah, I'll take them out a little bit more.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, there you go. Oh,
All right. So,
there you go.
all right. So now Bill is going to take his probes, and he's going to test outer shield to outer shield. All right. So we got connectivity there. Now he's going to test center to center, and now he's going to look for shorts by testing center to outer on both ends. All right. So that's how you do a continuity check on a piece of coaxial cable.